Moscow, Idaho was the kind of place where crime was almost a rumor, a sleepy college town where students laughed over coffee, walked to class in the crisp morning air, and lived without fear. That all changed on the 13th of November 2022. In the early hours of that morning, four University of Idaho students were brutally murdered in their off-campus home. Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Morgan, Zana Kernodal, and Ethan Chapin were stabbed to death in their sleep, the killer vanishing into the silence, leaving behind only terror and a town frozen in disbelief. No suspect, no clear motive, no murder weapon, just blood, confusion, and a single strange clue: a knife sheath left beside one of the bodies. This sheath was more than a piece of evidence. It whispered a name. On its button snap was a trace of DNA, a single thread that led investigators down a chilling rabbit hole. But that was only the beginning. Surveillance footage would later show a white Hyundai Elantra near the scene that night. Cell tower records revealed unusual phone activity, someone circling the victim's house multiple times before the murders. Slowly, investigators began to trace the digital footsteps of a suspect. He wasn't a known criminal. He wasn't even from Idaho. He was a 8-year-old Ph.D. student studying criminology, someone who had written academic posts about understanding the minds of killers. His name was Bryan Kohberger. Arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania just before the new year, the country watched in shock. A man obsessed with criminal behavior was now accused of one of the most brutal mass killings in Idaho's history. Authorities said he had driven across the country in the same white Hyundai spotted on camera. His cell phone records showed disturbing behavior, returning to the scene hours after the killings, possibly to relive the crime. Still, as the news exploded nationwide, one haunting detail remained. There was no known connection between Kohberger and the victims. No personal ties, no public conflict, just silence. As months passed, Kohberger remained behind bars, his eyes cold and empty in every courtroom appearance. In July 2025, he shocked the nation, once more pleading guilty to all 4 murders and to felony burglary, accepting 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. No trial, no defense story, no explanation. In a case that gripped the nation, the most horrifying question still hung in the air like smoke. Why did he do it? At his sentencing, Kohberger said only that he was sorry for the pain he caused, but not why he did it or what drove him. It was the victims' families who truly owned the courtroom that day. One by one, they stood and looked Bryan Kohberger in the face. Some wept, some screamed, some trembled with fury. Steve Goncalves, father of Kaylee, called Kohberger less than human. Others described their shattered lives: anxiety, depression, sleepless nights, fear of their own front doors. Yet, despite the pain, a few even offered words of mercy. "I forgive you," one said. But perhaps the most haunting words came from Kaylee's sister, Aliva. She looked Kohberger in the eyes and told him, "No one is afraid of you. You are not important. You are nothing." The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge, in his final words, acknowledged the elephant in the room. "We may never know why," he said. "And if we keep searching for it, we may give him the very relevance he wants." Bryan Kohberger had no visible emotion, no outbursts, no tears, just a stone face, as if he were watching his own story unfold from a distance. The case was over. Justice, in legal terms, had been served. But the wounds in Moscow were still fresh, still bleeding. 4 beautiful lives had been erased. And their killer, the man who studied how murderers think, never explained why he became one himself. A scholarship was launched in their honor. A garden was planted near the university. But there is no real closure when the reason behind such horror remains a blank space. This wasn't just a crime. It was a mystery wrapped in flesh and blood, a moment that changed an entire town forever. And maybe that's what still keeps people up at night. Not just the murders themselves, but the echoing silence that followed them. What makes someone choose evil? And how do we ever live in peace when the answer never comes?